Okay, we have a new session coming up. Welcome back, everyone. Leadership Roundtable session. And we have kept the sessions, I would say, more specific to the industry. So you'll have a session around GCCs, which is what the session is all about. The next session will be more about enterprises. And there are few, what I say, very topical, I would say, sessions which will come further on. Leadership Roundtable session, let me provide a context to everyone. The theme is about reimagining the GCCs with AI, data engineering, cloud, and design the new playbook for innovation and transformation. And let me build a context around this whole session. Global capability centers and the nomenclatures, while have changed from shared services, captives, GICs to GCCs today, are at an inflection point. And as the pace at which quad, which is AI, data engineering, cloud, and design, is changing, every aspect is exponential and at high velocity. GCCs are contextually empowered with critical and strategic business capabilities. They're rapidly evolving as enterprise transformational hubs and are beginning to be at the center of quad driven transformation era. And the new playbook of GCC is getting characterized by driving strategic and enhanced transformative and innovative practices leveraged by quad. However, with pandemic bringing unprecedented challenges, the path to exhibit new age capabilities in GCCs is often fraught with gyrations of the macro environment, winds of change on exponential technologies adoption, and continual value creation and upping the ante to stay relevant in the VUCA world. We will be answering some of the questions. What does it take for GCCs to scale and create value in the disruptive times, leveraging Quad? What's the new strategic reset that parent organizations will have to consider for GCCs in the near future? Reimagine the GCCs with AI, data engineering, cloud, and design the new playbook for innovation and transformation. And we've got an eclectic set of speakers for this session. Thank you so much for all coming in. Suman Das, Managing Director, Eli Lilly Services. Naveen Xavier, Managing Director, JP Morgan Chase. Viju Matthew, Global Director, Analytics, ABN Bev. Saraswati Ramachandra, Sara as she's fondly known, Director City. And for moderating this session, we have none other than Irina Ghosh, Executive Director, Cloud Solution, Microsoft India. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Over to you, Irina.
Lovely. A warm welcome to the entire audience out here, and great to have you with us today. I was listening into the previous sessions that Samir moderated and the follow up on the keynotes as well. And it's amazing to see the pace of the transformation and the way things are kind of shaping up, really bringing Quad to the core as a propeller of everything which is happening in the innovation centers. So, with that, I think the context has been that when we look at the global delivery centers or the global innovation centers, whichever way you might want to call them, from being there at the pace in terms of driving various kinds of strategic initiatives and then kind of taking up the mantle of becoming transformation hubs. Now, the entire theme is around how can they increase the pace of transformation and innovation. So, when you're thinking about all these strategic change management initiatives at the heart of it, how is the leadership at any of the global capability centers gearing up to drive these transformative initiatives? I'll come for this first to you, Naveen. What are some of the views that you have?
Okay. Thanks, Irina, and thanks, Samir, for giving this opportunity. It's really a privilege. Just to set the context, when they came up with this particular topic and they talked about GCCs, the first thing that hit my mind is the compiler which I used way back. And rightly, I think Samir talked about there's so many names and so many avatars that it's gone through. So I recently joined JP Morgan, and my journey has been pretty over the last a few months. But I think the perspective and the point which Irina is trying to talk about, how are we really gearing up for this transformation? Because I think every organization is talking about transformation and innovation. So let me just come down to how are we looking at it? At JP Morgan, there are three things, if I can probably just classify it into those parts. The first thing which I noticed, and something which really augurs well, is we have an overall global strategy as to what we need to do towards transformation, what we need to do. So what do we need to do towards a quad? We're talking about a multi-cloud hybrid strategy. So what is the whole organization looking at? And India as a GCC, we're trying to see is that how would we contribute to this overall strategy, which the organization is looking at. So there is a kind of a synchronization, there is a method in the madness as to what we would like to focus on. So that's, and how do we contribute to each of these elements around Quad to drive the transformation. The second thing we really did is, and in the previous session, we did talk about it. We are mostly caught up with technical debt and saying, okay, we have so many things that we need to do. We really do not have time to think about transformation, right? So we have created teams which are helping us leapfrog and think many years ahead rather than just think of something which we need to play catch up with, right? So one of the teams that I lead is on digital intelligence, which is a global team. And really our focus is on questioning the status quo, the kind of applications, the kind of platforms which are there right now. Is this really relevant? Is there a change in the process that's required? So really asking, do we need to go through this entire rigmarole the way it's being done manually today? Can we look at more modern techniques to solve it? And the second thing we're also looking at is, how do you reimagine applications? We are not building applications for 2021, 2022, but how will applications be when we're looking at from 2025 perspective, so that we start building and gearing ourselves towards those kind of applications, because really we will become irrelevant if we just continue to play catch up, and that's a never ending circle which goes on, right? So the third thing that we looked at is, for us, if you have a strategy in place and you have the right teams and the people in place, is also they need to be enabled with the right kind of ecosystem, and that's around how do you have the right kind of opportunities to upskill people. Do you have the right kind of partners available so that you can work along with them and leverage the capabilities that they bring up. So we are trying to create a plethora of opportunities for people to contribute towards the overall strategy of transformation. And while it's still early days, and I'm sure over the next few years, 12, 24 months, we should see these things taking shape and really becoming relevant.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for that. One was towards aligning with the strategies, and second was kind of seeing that how do you stay ahead of the curve, and what are some of the innovative, creative things which can really be done towards gearing up in that journey. And ask the same question, possibly from Vijo. Vijo, how do you see this coming across in terms of building data and the capabilities from a cost center to a value creation? How are you seeing these things coming together?
First of all, thanks a lot for the opportunity. Really appreciate. So let me talk about the ABI journey, right? ABI started its GCC in India in 2018, right? And if you think about the ABI landscape, we have around 10 big centers across the globe in every continent, and pretty much 7,000 colleagues work in operations, right? And we call it back-end operations, right? We call it BSCs, Business Service Centers, or GCCs, right? With an annual operating cost of 200 million. And if you think about the BSCs, general perception is that they are cost centers, right? The leading KPI in a cost center is, there's only one leading KPI, which is nothing but the FTE reduction, right? Every year there is a target on FTE reduction. How are you going to reduce the FTE, right? That's the leading KPI when it comes to, apart from the normal KPIs of on time, quality, right? The traditional KPIs, right? The leading KPI there is transformational KPI for our leaders was always the FTE reduction, right? So when we built the center in India in 2018, our thought process was, how are we going to change that process? Obviously, we don't want to put people on processes which doesn't really count for a human brain, that's for sure. But how are you really going to transform back office centers for ABI, right? Because think about our perspective, right? We do pretty much two big spaces that we work in is finance and logistics. ABI is a 50 billion revenue company, which means we collect 50 billion. We pay out vendors pretty much 32 billion. Our taxes is 16 billion because it's a beverage business. We pay a lot of excise taxes. Our logistics cost is 5 billion. Our storage cost is 3 billion. Our obsolescence is 100 million. Our out of stock is 1.2 billion. So the question was, how are we going to use these 7,000 colleagues that we have in influencing these numbers, right? How can we really change the mindset of making BSCs look like cost centers to value creation centers, right? And we had great leaders who built this center in 2018, and we focused on three areas. Obviously, we knew that we need to leverage data. To leverage data, we need to have good investments on data lakes, because we all work with SAP. As you know, SAP is a great system, but when it comes to data accessibility, there's a lot of challenges. So we need to build our own data lakes to make data accessible. That was the first step. Second thing is, obviously we need to automate and ensure that the tasks that we ask people to do, they are interesting. We need to transform the processes. To do all these things, right, the way to do is, if you ask business just capex for doing all these things, it may not happen. So what we did is, in the first 2 years, we heavily focused on RPA, and that brought a lot of savings, and that money was put into digital transformation and analytics, right? So we have a great practice in digital transformation and analytics now, clubbed with Brudak, which is nothing but our 400 strong data lake team. Long story short, we started in 2019, and this year we have realized pretty much 60 million in EBITDA for the business, right? By avoiding duplicate payments, by avoiding leakages in collections, by reducing the taxes, by optimizing the logistics processes, right? By optimizing the supply chain process, right? We were able to realize 60 million in EBITDA. And that was a big revelation for the business, because normally when you think about analytics, people always consider analytics, people always attach analytics with top line, right? When it talks about sales or marketing, people always think about analytics, but people never thought about analytics can be used in back office centers, right? So that's doing two things for us. First, we are changing our perception of cost centers to value creation centers. We are creating great value, pretty much, pretty much 60 million realized a year. This year we're having a target of 100 million. And second thing is, we are making the job of the colleagues more interesting, because we are building platforms, we're building tools that's going to change the profile of the colleagues that work for, right? So great journey so far. Heavy investments on data, because data is the base. Without data, there is no story. So heavy investments on data, heavy investment on data science and digital transformation, because we believe that sometimes there is no point in we building our own platform. It's best to leverage the best platforms that are available in different spaces, whether it's logistics, whether it's collections, whether it's payments, getting the world-class platforms in-house, and ensuring that the colleagues that work for us, they have a great career, and a career which is very, very rewarding, and there's some learning for them in that process.
So wonderful. And Vikram, I must say those numbers were totally baffling. And the proof of the pudding comes a lot of times when you really have those hard data-based outcomes. And you rightfully kind of summarized a lot of these. Thank you so much for that. So with that, I'll come to my next question, which is, in today's time, there's been a lot of emphasis towards seeing that how can you really optimize and bring in a lot of efficiencies on the core that you're doing, and at the same time bring across a lot of intelligence and forward looking views towards driving and delivering the new. So that's the question that I'll have first to Sarah. What are your views on this?
Thanks, Arina, and glad to be part of the discussion. Um, so, Arina, just alluding to what Vijay was saying, right? I think from a GCC perspective, we've come a long way. When GCCs were really cost center to ops, back office to now really value adding center, right? I see it, and mostly I've worked in BFSI industry. Without alluding to details of my own company, I will broadly talk about how we have transformed, right? Um, if you see, GCCs have proved invaluable for most of the parent organization. The ability to transform, adapt to their new functions, newer way of doing things, finding innovative ways to effectively support the parent organization. And that has led to a transformation where we have seen exponential growth of GCCs here, right? Uh, in the past, it was most of cost arbitration, quality center, and now everybody is heading to innovation center or the innovation culture. Bulk of GCC efforts were previously centered around mundane work, repetitive back office, and over a period of time, it became more of strategic operating model and how do we add value. But now, what is changing is how do we actually bring innovation to this whole thing, right? The critical value chain by transforming, building depth of talent, innovation via newer ways of delivering. In Crux, what I'm trying to say is there has been a continuous transformation in the journey of GCC. The way I see GCC maturing to innovation center and leading to this path is really by exploring newer ways of internal and external innovation ecosystem, right? When we talk about innovation, it's not really in isolation, and no silos have worked to bring in disruptive innovation. So it's really an ecosystem of internal, external uh, ecosystem that I'm talking about to solve business problem using technology. Now, gone are those days where business and technology, we used to think they are separate. To allude to what Amrish was talking about, both have to come together, business partners and technology practitioners, to bring in a solution that makes that really brings in that kind of disruption and innovation, and that revolves around technology, right? There was a time where we used to work on SQL or Excel sheet and produce the output. Now you can't imagine that. Terabytes of data, and that cannot happen without the data lake setup or the big data Hadoop setup, right? Um, and the cost effectiveness is also brought in from the fact that hardware has come a long way, and that includes the cloud infrastructure, includes the high computing machines. People are able to process all of these much faster to come to the right insights. And being in the banking industry, or otherwise, right, overall for GCC as well, developing the talent proactively to tackle to the newer technologies of Quad is an important element. And delivering, of course, to a bottom line, top line is essentially how I see GCCs evolving. Now, specifically uh, with respect to banking industry, for a lot of regulatory aspects, uh, banking industry is still evolving and grappling around how do we come across the regulatory elements, which you can't get into a lot of disruption or innovation. With that said, gone are the days where it was just SaaS based, where it was isolated, open API. All of these have disrupted and changed the way we used to work in the banking industry. Fintech players have changed how we used to make payments. So a lot of disruption has happened, internal, external, which has both forced and made banks think otherwise, right? So now there are multiple ways innovation is happening within banking industry. One is, of course, like I said, how do we make it external as well, right? So
Right.
playing with the fintech, working with the fintechs where it's a win-win partnership is
Yeah.
one element. Also enabling the talent pool to learn newer technologies, bring in people not just from banking industry, but people from other industries where we
Yeah.
can actually learn from each other. And then keeping customer centricity in mind, how do we design the customer journey? What are the pain points? How do we design around this whole customer experience?
Right.
Has been a big journey into this whole thing.
Absolutely wonderful. And I really like that ecosystem build-up that you referred to, because you cannot just be driving the ship alone. So thank you so much for that. I'll come with the same question to you, Suman. What are some of the new strategies that you're looking at creating capability within the GCCs for them to remain not just relevant, but ahead of the curve?
Thanks, Irina, and well, thanks for having me here. Great opportunity, and good afternoon to the audience and to everyone. Um, look, when I look at the theme of the conference, quad is no longer a choice but a compulsion. And as Sarah was saying, that I think GCCs have done a terrific job in terms of getting to where we are today. However, change is constant, and predictably, we find ourselves in a position where we have to reimagine and reinvent ourselves. I think the good news is that we start from a position of strength. I think the platform and the kind of ecosystem development we've already done and the talent we have does place GCCs in a position where we can actually lead and seize this opportunity and climb to the next level. I think we have a seat at the table, and organizations realize already the kind of role we can play in the ensuing disruption. Now, if you look at it, and it's not just pharma specific, and not only for my company. When I look at the industry in terms of the big resets that are happening, we see five big resets happening. I think the first one that underpins everything is the mindset. The rewiring of our mindset to think and act digital. That's the core element of the organization redesign, if you will. The second is automation. I think GCCs already are helping a lot of organizations leapfrog and automate all the repetitive and non-core tasks, which and so robotization, etc., is going to inexorably drive the resources to tasks that really matter, because the real work is going to happen in the is freeing. That is always the case, right? I think the third one is that the revisit of the organizational footprint. I mean, typically the conventional footprint that we have had, GCs will have to go and revisit that because the new change in the configuration of the organization that we have today. I think the other big reset will be on the innovation agenda. I think GCCs will have to really scale up on their innovation game by building bespoke quad capabilities, solutions, on offerings, which will help our corporate decisions. I think that's already happening. And we also are tasked a lot with autonomous decision support and also AI augmented human intelligence. I think finally, one important aspect that's going to be characterized agility. And what I mean is, as you alluded to, that we can't do everything inside, right? I mean, we will not have all the answers from within. We are not like to. We are probably likely to get better answers outside. But the pace of the change outside is so frightening that staying insular and inward, we'll probably miss the key points which actually might make a difference in either competitive advantage for the company or cause other challenges. So we need to create that intrinsic agility to tap new ideas, if you will, from the external ecosystem. Go to this, if you will, in different avatars. So you might be a customer, you might be an accelerator, you might be an investor. So again, examples of that would be co-creating with startups, nurturing accelerators, acquire hiring for skill gaps, research partnerships, as well as targeted solutions. So all in all, I think GCCs can really widen the playing field for them. In some cases, they'll be forced to, because and we can already see that in various industries. My industries, I belong to the healthcare industry, and you can see the, I guess, staying from home and consulting a doctor or even getting to those invasive advice has been so easy because just because we had technology to back it up. And that apart, it's also helping us speed up the entire process of getting life-saving medicines for the patients who are waiting for them. So I'll stop there, but we are certainly in very exciting times, and the possibilities are endless.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Now, I'll shift gears. I'll go a little to the cultural part of it, because a lot of it that you all talked about, whether it's driving innovation, creating kind capabilities, etc., it's a lot to do with how you have a good pool of talent, a system, and how the cultural priorities really get into the ethos of the organization. So let me come to you, Suman, first. How do you see the cultural priorities getting shaped, and how do the entire GCC ecosystem and people within have a role to play there?
Yeah, I mean, culture is, I guess, fundamental to everything, right? I mean, culture, engagement, and employee happiness are a given, no matter whether you are in BAU or you want to transform, right? I think GCCs, by and large, have figured out how to create that
I think there's a little bit of an audio glitch. In the meantime, why don't I come to you, Vijo, with the same question on the cultural priorities?
Yeah. So, if I talk about the ABI landscape, right, over the last 5 years or 4 years, 5 years, right, there are three forces that really transforming our space. Like I think you already talked about, right, which is digital transformation, RPA automation, and analytics, right. And that's kind of completely changing the landscape of workforce in the GCCs, right? We are seeing that the new platforms are able to optimize the workflow. We don't need that kind of huge investments on people, for example, right? Automation is transforming areas. Analytics is bringing insights and intelligence on different areas. So the challenge here now is how are we going to create an interesting career path for our colleagues that with us, right? First thing that we have to change was the traditional KPIs with which they were measured, right? In an operation space, typically the biggest KPI that everybody goes with is always like on time delivery, quality, first time, right? But now what we are saying is that those are like a given, right? That's not that cannot be cannot be KPIs anymore, because if you look at most of the stats, right, the KPIs are anyway sitting at 97, 98%, right? There's no point in we keeping that those are the leading KPIs. So everybody in our business now carries a value target. If you're a manager, you carries a value target. If you're a senior manager, if you're a director, VP, everybody carries a value target. So we completely changed the KPIs with which people are being measured, right? And people started being measured on number of ideas that they're giving to transform their spaces, right? So first thing we have to change was the KPIs, moving away from the traditional KPIs to new age KPIs that really looks for thought leaders in the business, ignite their thought process on how to identify the next penny that will bring value for the business. That was the first thing, right? Second thing is the workforce that we have today. We have to either put them under one of the four umbrellas. Either we should develop them for analytics. I'm not saying that they all have to become data scientists, but they could be at least they should be at least the citizen data scientists. There could be interpreters, right? There should be insights leaders, right? So one stream of our colleagues needs to go into data science or analytics. Another stream is getting trained on RPA. Another stream is getting trained on a digital transformation, right? We need scrum masters. We need experts in digital transformation space. So we are developing that. And the fourth and most important thing is we need domain experts, right? If you looked at our earlier pyramid of colleagues that we had, we have a lot of general practitioners, right? But what we understood is that even though we can transform the entire space using a lot of these technologies, if you don't have world-class practitioners in those spaces, if you don't have tax experts, we don't have P2P experts, we have logistics experts, right? The system will fail, right? Because the entire ecosystem depends on the knowledge base of colleagues that are working, right? So we are not telling that we are not giving importance to the domains. Actually, we are
Right.
giving more importance to the domains. We are trying to build domain experts, right? We are trying to bring very talented colleagues who can be just classed as domain experts. Their job is to transform the space using their domain knowledge, right? That's one set. So people who are very hardcore in those domains, who are very good understanding of the domains, we are creating domain experts. Others, we are
Right.
now upskilling them into one of these four streams, so that we are too early today, but in 3 years' time, when we see that our whole structure of our team changes, right, from a 2,000 member team that could reduce significantly, we should have roles for everybody, and those roles should be aligned to their thought process. So we really do test to understand what are their interests, right? Somebody's interested in analytics, somebody's interested in digital transformation. So we try to identify the interest of the people, and there goes heavy investments on upskilling the colleagues. So it's not an overnight journey, right? We can't expect the colleagues to be one of the experts in these three spaces in a day or two. It's like a journey. It will take a year or two to get there. But the good news is that we are making a lot of investments, heavy investments on training, on upskilling our colleagues, so that the GCC of the future, right, maybe 2 or 3 years from now, the mix of people that we see there will be very different to what we are seeing today. So two
Perfect.
things: one is upskilling, another thing is changing the culture, changing the KPIs with which we are measuring people, right? These are the two things that we did in ABI to bring a new culture of learning and growth for our colleagues.
Perfect. Perfect. Suman, if you are kind of in, do you want to put just a 30-second wrap up to your previous comments?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know where I left it off.
Marina, I don't want to spoil the conversation. It's going very engrossing, but we have 5 minutes to wrap up, please.
Sure.
Thank you so
Sure.
much.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll do a 30-second. I'll just summarize three things. One is, I think, at the overall level, in terms of cultural changes, it would, and it's not an exhaustive list, things like customer centricity, flexibility in approach, the employee engagement, those are things would demand top attention. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is going to be central. One of the biggest tensions would be how do you inclusive and ensuring that your existing skilled tech or non-tech labor are taken care of from their needs and aspirations perspective. I think a big change has to happen in terms of the top, especially at the board level and the
Right.
governance level. People have to understand that they need voices representing generations, and make it safe for people to voice contrarian views, and also sort of manage open and robust discussions.
Perfect. Thank you. Naveen and Sarah, I have a last question to you. If in 30 seconds you can call out what is the biggest challenge that you have in navigating the times such as now? Naveen.
Yeah. So 30 seconds. The biggest challenge really is, Irina, there's no playbook because the things, the environment, the situation is changing so fast. You cannot really say what worked 10 years back is going to work now. And we really need to be in the state of constant evolution. So we are really looking at how we circumvent by trying out new things where we can really connect with the people in terms of giving them opportunities. And a simple example quickly is last year December was AWS reInvent the event, and out of 80,000 developers, the first and second position were the deep racer competition. 80,000 developers, the first and second position both were from JP Morgan, and incidentally, both were from India, right? So,
Lovely.
is JP Morgan really going to get into self-driving cars? No, but the real part is that we are giving them an opportunity to try out new technologies around deep reinforcement learning, and tomorrow it could be used probably in recommender systems and so on. So, this is the new opportunities, and the other way is, I mean, they're looking at how to create a culture of entrepreneurship where people can actually start pitching like a Shark Tank environment, and so people can start trying out new ideas because we have a lot of opportunities and a big landscape here, and people are really pitching and saying, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur within JP Morgan and try it out. So really, it is about how do we really navigate around the uncertainty, the new environment that we're going to face around.
Perfect. Sarah, to you too.
Yeah, just continuing to what Naveen was saying, I look at, I mean, while there are several challenges, I think two key things is one around the thinking of innovation, where traditionally the thinking of innovation has been leverage innovation to drive service quality, improve employee engagement, and as value, to the new normal or the new proposition of leverage agility, flexibility, technology at the GCC level, and bring in strategic lever to drive companies differentiation, which ties to the value and thus the competitiveness and the agenda. And the second one around workforce transformation, where again the thinking was complement or supplement the enterprise workforce with best global talent in GCCs to collaborate with a globally distributed team. We have realized during the pandemic there is no location barrier, so collaborate with globally distributed team and enhance the company to execute any work from any location and any team. That shift in the thinking, while it's happening, it's still some way to go.
Perfect. And as I wrap it up, I have just one last rapid fire question for all of you. I need a single word. If you were to describe a leader who's driving transformation and innovation for this change in today's world, what is the virtue that this leader should be having? Suman, if I may start with you.
Empathy.
Perfect. Naveen?
2 words: think different.
Very nice. Vijo?
I would say value creator.
Super. Sarah?
For me, it's more around enterprise talent.
Lovely. Those were such heartwarming virtues to hear from all of you. And thank you so much for such an engaging and a very participative way of putting your perspectives. Thank you so much and a lovely time. Back to you,
Thank you,
Samir.
Rina.
Thank you so much, Irina.
Thanks,
First of all, Irina, let me tell you, you are a super moderator. You know, first of all, how to finish on time, which is crucial because we are a little backed up in terms of the timing. But more important, I think this is where I was trying to take some feedback from the audience. I mean, the kind of nuggets of how each of these GCCs are playing today in the market, given the gyrations, came out very specifically. Viju, Suman, Sarah, and Naveen gave their own trajectories in terms of the kind of challenges what they're facing and how they're trying to embark on a new journey. Of course, the playbook is subject to the maturity of the GCCs, but more important, I must say that when you get hard hitters, this is what you get, which is the knowledge, insights, and nuggets coming together in a seamless manner. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much, Irina, for moderating it very nicely. Console, over to the next session, please. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.